In this particular session on the organization development and tools 1 is there, we will first understand what is the organization development. Then the definitions given by the different scholars about the organization development and the 8 characteristics of the organization development interventions are there. History of the organization development, organizational development principles, then the humanistic, democratic and the client centered is there. Then we will talk about this the analyzing the process of the organizational development, then the OD strategy, the 5 phases, OD techniques to deal with the resistance to the change. Case study in Starwood uses TQM to make its the hotels more effective, and the research paper and references as usual. So, what is organization development? Organization development enables people to transform the systems. So, OD is the application of the behavioral science to organizational and the system issues to align strategy and capability. If it enhances the effectiveness of the system through the interventions that enhances people's collective capability to achieve the shared goals. Now, OD enhances the effectiveness of the system through the provision of the interventions that build capacity and capacity to achieve our collective goals. OD improves the performance and the health of systems of the employing the community in our organization and enabling people to flourish, thrive and they have meaning in their work. Organization development is an effort to plan organization wide and the management from the top to increase the organization effectiveness and the health through planned interventions in the organization's processes using behavioral science knowledge. Richard Beckett is there. So, organization development is a response to change, a complex educational strategy intended to change the beliefs, attitude, values and structure of organizations so that they can better adapt to a new technologies, markets and the challenges and the dizzying rate of the change itself. In an example, although not exclusively so on group and the organizational processes in contrast to the substantive the content, an emphasis on the work team as the key unit for the learning more effective modes of the organizational behavior, an emphasis on the collaborative management of the work team culture, an emphasis on the management of the culture of the total system, attention to the management of the system ramification, the use of the action research model, the use of a behavior scientist, change agent, sometimes referred to as a catalyst or the facilitator is there, and a view of the change efforts in an ongoing process is there. Now, to understand the organization development, we have to focus on these 8 interventions. I will be discussing in detail also later on, but the focus is that you have to make on these the HRM, OB, and therefore, here is the group and the organizational processes. So, your group which is making these changes because your development is a change process, and as we have seen in the definition also, that is in the organization development we are going for the future actions plans. So, an emphasis on the work team as a key unit of learning and the more effective modes is there, and second intervention will be the team will be there. The third emphasis will be on the that is the collaborative management, and when the organizations they create that culture, there another the intervention can be the culture. You can mix the all the 8 interventions to make the organization development or any one of them, and in which situation which intervention will be applicable, that we will talk about in the organization development. So, systematic organization development activities have a recent history, and to use the analogy of a mangrove tree. So, have at least the 4 important on the trunk stems are there. So, one trunk stem consists of the innovations in applying the laboratory training insights to complex organizations. A second major stem is the survey research and the feedback methodology. Both stems have an intervened with a third, the emergence of the action research is there. The fourth stem is the emergence of the Tavistock socio-technical and socio-clinical approaches. The key actors in these stems interact with each other and are influenced by the experiences and the concepts from many fields are there. So, therefore, in the history when we see that is how organizations development has taken place, that is the survey research is there, and here you find from the trunk stems of the OD. So, therefore, one is this laboratory training is there, right. And here we find out that is the how the organizations they provide the laboratory training. I would like to share one example. In this Hindalco company, long back when I visited for providing the training there of their executives, and Mr. Khan was there, and then Mr. Khan was has shown us that laboratory, and that laboratory was that is before making these particular changes or making the persons to work on the realistic place, this laboratory practical work they will learn and understand. Second is the it is RRVPNL, Rajasthan Rajya Vidyut Prasaran Nigam Limited, Rajasthan. There also I conducted number of training programs, and there this Mr. Chirania, the chief engineer that time, that he has shown that is the how these transformers that a laboratory was created where the transformers were their LS, VS were there, and then that has been shown to them that is how that has been working. So then these action research is there, that is how the action research that will take these survey research and feedback methodology normally we do into the social sciences and social technical approach is there. Now we will discuss this socio technical approaches and which has been emergence of the Tavistock, the key actors here we will discuss one by one. Now the laboratory training STEM, when we talk about unstructured small group situations in which the participants learn from their own actions. It began to develop about the 1946 from the various experiments in using the discussion groups to achieve the changes in behavior in back home situations. In particularly, an intergroup relations workshop are held at the State Teachers College in the New Britain, Connecticut in the summer of the 1946 influenced the emergence of laboratory training. This workshop was sponsored by the this Connecticut Interracial Commission and this research center for the group of dynamics then at MIT was there. So, as I was mentioning about that is this is becoming this the laboratory training workshops are there and therefore, the person before he goes for the work an intergroup relation workshop will be held, and through this workshop he will get the understanding and the learning is there. Survey research and the feedback is there. Now, the survey research and feedback, a specialized form of the action research, constitutes the second major steps in the history of the organization development. So, it resolves around the techniques and approaches that are developed over a period of years by the staff members at the Survey Research Center of the University of Michigan. The results of this experiment study lend support to the ideas that in the intensive group discussion procedures for utilizing the results of the employee questionnaire survey, and that can be effective tool for the introducing positive change in a business organization. So, it deals with the system of the human relationship as a whole. The superior and the subordinates can change together, and it deals with the each manager, supervisor and the employee in the context of his own job, his own problem and his own work relationships are there. Now, however, this survey research it is having the certain advantages and certain disadvantages. If the survey is realistic and the survey during survey research normally you contact with the people, you make the employee, like here it has been given that the results of an employee questionnaire survey. Now, it depends on this that questionnaire first, the construct which you are using, how much that is the authenticate is there. And those who are into the PhD and research, they know that is you take the reliability and validity of that particular questionnaire. So, first is important is this in the survey research and feedback that is your questionnaire that has to be very much relevant, and you have to understand that is each item that questionnaire and that will be analyzed, so that you can give the proper feedback is to the participants is there. Now, take the another side of the respondents. So, many times you have to find out that is whether that respondents they have responded properly and honestly and with the full concentration or not. In the case if the respondents are not serious while responding, then your findings that will be of no use. So, therefore, to identify whether my so two things are here suggested. So, you increase your the sample size respondents, and then you can make this common method bias test. So when you are making this CMB, then you can find out there is the whether your respondents were really serious or not. So these two challenges with this survey research and feedback that you can try to overcome as much as possible. I will not say the 100%, but yes, it will be realistic or very close to the realistics, and you can create the hypothesis on basis of your findings. Third one is the action research STEM is there. So participants action research is used with the most frequency in organization development. The laboratory training STEM in the history of the organization development has a heavy component of the action research. The survey feedback STEM is the history of a specialized form of the action that research, and it is making these Tavistock projects. So Tavistock projects has led a strong action research thrust. William F. White and Edith L. Hamilton used action research in their work with the Chicago's Tremont Hotel in 1945 publication. Kurt Levin and his students conducted the numerous action research projects in the mid 1940s and early 50s, and the work of these and other scholars and practitioners in inventing and utilizing the action research was basic in the evolution of the organization development is there. So here we find out that is this particular intervention which you are going for the action research, here it becomes very realistic because then you are in the field itself, right, and you are working with those problems and issues on the first hand, and then you come out with the solutions for this particular organization development intervention. The socio-technical and socio-clinical STEM, a fourth STEM in the history of organization development, is the evolution of the socio-clinical and the socio-technical approaches to helping the groups and the organizations. The clinic was founded in the 1920 as a outpatient facility to provide the psychotherapy and insights. These are the psychological clinics, psychotherapy and insights from the treatment of the battle neurosis in World War I. A group focus emerged early in the work of Tavistock in the context of family therapy, in which the child and the parent received the treatment simultaneously. The action research mode also emerged at the Tavistock in attempts to give the practical help to families, organizations, and the communities are there. So organizational development principles, humanistic, democratic, and the client-centered are there. So these humanistic principles of organization development, democratic principles of organization development, and the client-centered principles of the organizational development that we will see. So when we are talking about the humanistic principle of organization development, so developing this further, we can identify the humanistic principle of organizational development. Margulies and Reyes in 1972 explain them as being the following: providing the opportunities for the people to function as a human beings rather than as the resources to the productive process, providing opportunities for the each organization member as well as for the organization itself to develop to their full potential, and seeking to increase the effectiveness of the organization in terms of the all of its goals. Attempting to creating an environment in which it is possible to find the exciting and the challenging work. Providing opportunities for the people in organization is to influence the way in which they relate to work, and the organization and the environment is there, and therefore your whole focus is on the people, and the people, they are highly motivated because you are making these practices of the interactions related to the work, the organization and environment which are very positive, and as a result of which treating each human being as a person with a complex set of needs, and all of which are the important to their work and their life. So therefore you are giving the importance to your human resources, and this humanistic principle of the organization development that works. So what this principle shows us is that the organization development is seen as being the something that is a people centered. To make an organization more successful, the humanistic principle assumes that there will be a need to develop the people is there. When we are talking about the democratic principles of the organization development, which is another approach which based on the democratic principles, and this focuses on the processes within the organization and the need to challenge these for the successful organization development. So the democratic principles question the authoritarian and autocratic approaches, they might stop organization growth occurring. arbitrary management practices, if there is no reason for management practices, then it could be argued that they stop the organizational developing is there. Here in the democratic principles of the organization development, the dysfunctions of the bureaucracies, and there must be a purpose for the rules in the organization. The rules should be enhance the activities and not put in place restriction which are not really needed. So, as I was talking in the beginning, that is these bureaucratic the systems that rules regulations that should be the enhancing the activities. Why the rules are made, why the bureaucratic system is there. So, that is the control mechanism is there, and why to control? To get the maximum output from the system and people and process. So, therefore, these rules are not the barriers, rather than they are facilitators which are really needed. So, what we see from these two approaches in the differences between focusing on the people and the focusing on the processes within the organization. Arguably, effective organizational development needs to address both, but many compensators argue that the primary focus should be on the people is there, because ultimately I also agree with this particular argument, that is our primary focus should be on the people, because the people makes the process, people make the system. So, therefore, if you want to make the system effective, so that the production will be higher side, then in that case it is very necessary that your people follow that process. To follow the process, the rules are required. So, definitely the support of this focus on this particular aspect is necessary, but we have to keep in mind that is this is only possible when your people participate. And that is why this is the people centric, that is focusing on the people, that becomes the very important. But as we see that the market is also very important. So, client centered principles of the organizational development. So, final principle that we propose here is to consider the client centered principles. That reminds us of the purpose of an organization. It is there is provided the goods or services to the customers and clients. So, customer is the God, as we always keep on saying. Therefore, in that case when internally we are focusing on the people, internally we are focusing on the process, but externally we have to focus on that is the clients are there, because this reminds us of the purpose of an organization. So, why we are developing the product? We are developing the product to satisfy our customers, and it is therefore to provide the goods or services to the customers, and the clients are there. So, customer satisfaction. So, nowadays we do not say the customer satisfaction, we say customer is delighted. When we say the customer is delighted, means what was expected, he has got more than that, and therefore, so all that is does is has to be focused on the end user, and our end users should be highly delighted. So, what the organization is providing. So, if the organization is going to stop producing the some products, will it be still be able to meet the needs of the organization? If the organization is going to offer services in a different way, will this be the best option for the customers? There is a need to balance the demands of the external stakeholders with the need for the organization to be financially and operationally successful. So, analysis the process of the organization development we will take care. Now, the stakeholders in the organization and their role and interventions in the organization development is there. So, first is the interest. And to understand that different stakeholders, we have different levels of interventions in the organization development, and which intervention is to be used when, that we can see from here. So, interest will be low and interest will be high. The power is low and power is high, and therefore, in that case whenever the interest is low and the power is low, then you are required an intervention which will be monitored, because it is an apathetic situation, and therefore, in that case you will be able to control and move towards the development of the organization if you are monitoring the process. If the interest is high, but the power is low, then they keep informed, because providing that knowledge, providing that information, you are making them more powerful. So, therefore, in that case they will be shift from as a defenders to the manage closely the promoters. So, here it is very important, that is the if the power is low, please make them the powerful, empower them. So, here actually the solution is empowerment, and this this empowerment that will make these people to move towards the high interest and the high power. Now, here we also understand that is the when we talk about this particular aspect of this power and the interest, then it is the low interest is there, but they are highly powerful. So, therefore, in that case here then they are the latents, and therefore, in that case please keep them satisfied, because they will not come out, and therefore, it is necessary to make them these the satisfied. So, as a result of which they will not express, but they will give their best output. Similarly, when the high interest and the high power, where is the focus is, and that is the promoters are there. Now, please understand, it is not that we have to reach from the 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. It is a question we have to understand in which situations we are, whether we are into the 1 or we are into the 2, we are into the 3 or we are into the 4, and as you see, that is the you what you want, that is the identify the latents. So, they keep the satisfied is there, and when there the defenders are there, because their interest is high and they are not getting the power. So, then they keep inform them, and therefore, they will understand that they are able to do something. So, there is a need to engage closely with the group that has a high level of power and a high level of interest, because this is still valid when the thinking about the organization development, when we are thinking about the impact of stakeholders in the organization. Those who have the highest level of power and interest in the organization are likely to be the managers are there. And looking at the role of the managers remind us of the different levels of operation in the organization. Now, here you can find out where do you are, your interest in the organization, whether it is high or not, and whether the power which you have, that is high or not. Now, please understand, here the solution is there, that is the senior managers running the organization and the sitting on the management team. So, these are the departmental managers, the managers and supervisors, all these are stakeholders, right. So, looking at the roles of the managers, that what are the different level of operations in the organizations are there, and then these stakeholders they influence the effectiveness of the organization development is there. So, your people, right, those who are working in the different process or positions of the organization, and they are required to be more active and the inclusive into the interest and the power is concerned. So, in an organization development is carried out at different levels and communicated down the hierarchy of the organization, and this brings us back to the systems theory again. A change that is happening in the one part of the organization might have an impact on a different part of the organization, and to ensure that I will like to give the example. For example, the technology, when you are making in the part changing in the part of the technology, definitely it is going to the impact on the manpower size also, to ensure that all changes taking place smoothly and the accordance with the overall aims of this organization. There is a need to ensure that all managers at all levels in the organization have a high level of interest, and if the organization and the power is to make a change happen, organizational development is a process comprising, then here we will discussing the 4 stages. The first one is that is about the contracting. The first phase, that is the deciding the whether to proceed with the OD intervention as a part of the decision making process. There is a requirement to decide how much finance, time and resources should be developed to the proposed intervention. The decision will be made through a process of the debates and the discussion with the stakeholders involved, and there will be a need to think about the existing resources, whether they are sufficient and whether additional resources can be found. Diagnosing, and this is the phase where the data is gathered, analyzed and presented. The focus is on the issues that need to be addressed. There is a need to identify the cause and effects of the any problems that have been identified, and to identify ways in which these issues can be overcome. So, intervention based on the analysis that has been carried out in the diagnosis stage, there is then a requirement to plan an intervention. The type of intervention will depend on the capabilities of the organization and what it is able to achieve as well as what it wants to achieve. So, finally, we have the evaluation stage, and this is a crucial last part of this process, because it asks whether the analysis of the information was correct, whether it was used correctly to plan the intervention, and ask what can be the learned from the process. An organization uses this information to become the more robust and successful in the future development. Now, this organization strategy, there are the 5 phases are there, and so these organization development strategies, they will be the entry, diagnosis, feedback, solution, and the evaluation. When we are talking about the entry, so exploring the problem opportunities of the situations, output in an engagement contract or the project plan with the expectations and the agreement on scope. So, therefore, in that case we will find that is the whenever we talk about the organization development, we exploring the problems or opportunities. Now, please understand the difference between the problems and opportunities. I have discussed about that organizations from the blended stage to the declining stage is there, that dissolution. Now, when you are going from the blended to the dissolution, then in that case you are focusing on the problem. But OD is not always used in the crisis situation or into the problem. That is why my emphasis is on these opportunities. So, focus on the opportunities or the situations. So, output is an engagement contract or the project plan with the expectations and the agreement on the scope is there. So, the fact finding phase, a data collection process where information is gathered, analyzed and reviewed. So, here we can say that is this is the fact finding phase is there, and we have talked about the different methods are there, right. We have talked about the survey method is there, survey and feedback method is there, and here when we are talking about the finding phase, action research is there, and when you are finding out all these phase, a data collection process and analyzed and reviewed is there, and it is a research orientation. So, dear friends, in the organizations which are the research oriented organizations, they are becoming the long time sustainable, and they are becoming these how they can make the organization more successful, because the those research organizations, they keep on doing the research. What is the life cycle, what is the future, what stage we are, what is the expectations of the people, what is the happiness index in the organization, and all in all. So, therefore, when we are making this diagnosis, so then you give the feedback is there. So, exploring the information for understanding, clarity and the accuracy. So, output is an action plan that outlines the change solutions to be developed and in define success indicators based on the information and the data analysis. So, solutions are the correcting the problem, closing gaps, improving or enhancing the performance, or the seizing opportunities. So, output is a plan or suggested training course curriculum is there. So, it is the solution for this particular organization development strategy will be, that is the what correcting this problem you are giving the solution. So, and enhancing the performance as a result of which it is a planner suggested training course curriculum which I mentioned, that is the you develop your people and make towards the move towards the success and the growth of the organization. So, finally, the evaluation. So, collecting data to determine if the initiative is meeting the goals and achieving the defined success indicators. So, output is an evaluation report with recommendations for the continuous improvement is there. So, the resistance to change occur at all levels of an organization is the manifest itself is organization politics and the power struggles between the individuals and the groups, and there are differing perceptions of the need to further change and so on. So, the tactics that managers can use to reduce the resistance to the change include education and communication, participation and empowerment, and then the facilitation is there. So, therefore, in that case here when we are going by this the change management process, so we educate and communicate with them that there is a need for this particular change. Similarly, we are making them more participative, and then we facilitate them, support them. Simultaneously, as we know, here actually there will be certain changes in their the working style, production procedures and all. So, what is required is the bargaining and the negotiation is required, and as a result of which this you have to be a master of it, and then you can avoid these coercions. So, this education and the communication, one of the most important the impediments to change the uncertainty and what is the going to change is there. Now, in the change agent, here the Levin's model, I would like to give the example of the Levin's model, and therefore, that is the unfreezing. Let the people understand that there is a need for the change. So, what you have to educate and communicate to them is that there is a need for the change is there, and change agent plays a very important role. Here the examples are given, that is a video conferencing by the Walmart has a state of the art video conferencing system. So, therefore, everywhere you are into the contact. So, at any part of the globe you are working, but you are the direct contact with the change agents. So, managers at corporate headquarters put in the presentation that are been to the Walmart stores, so that both managers and the workers are aware of the change that will to the taking place, and there is a need of the changes there. When we are talking about the participation and the environment empowerment is there, already I have mentioned about this, that is the your people with the high interest and high power, and therefore, in that case the workers to share their skills and talents. It is not like this, that is they are you are using their hands only, it is the you are supposed to use their brains also, and therefore, some organizations uses the ESOPs to motivate and reward employees to get the participation more and more, and come out with these the solutions to the problems. The talking about improving the productivity and the efficiency and effectiveness, organizational effectiveness is there. So, here example is given of the Southwest Airlines and GE participation and the empowerment are the two key elements of the most TQM programs are there. Now, the next is the facilitation. So, these are the several ways in which the organizations can help their members to facilitate and support them. Examples are given for the Apple give their most talented engineers time off from the ordinary job assignment to think about way to create the new kinds of the products are there. Many organizations they ensure that is their employees they are away from their workplace for in a year for some period of time, so that they can come back with the refreshing and the re-energizing is there. Here the are important bargaining and the negotiation, because managers will be making these changes, it is not everything is goody goody. So, therefore, there will be conflict, and in the conflict there will be the resolving the conflict strategies, and when you want to resolve the conflict strategies, you know, the different people to group negotiate their future tasks and roles and responsibilities, because you are making the changes into the organization. So, what will be my role? What will be my future? Whether the organization will throw me out or giving me the training and making the use of my talent. So, negotiation also helps individuals and groups to understand how changes will affect others to the organization as a whole, can develop a common perspective on why changes is taking place and why it is important is there. And finally, is the coercion is there. So, this is a disadvantage that can have the people angry and dissented, and that can make the refreezing process difficult. Managers should not underestimate the level of the resistance to changes there, and therefore, they have to handle, and levels can be threatened with these here, and the ultimate way is to eliminate the resistance, is to coerce the key players into the accepting change, and by this way you can make them to accept the changes into the organization, and you can develop your organization. This is a case study, that is a Starbucks uses a TQM to make its hotels more effective. This is the study will help you to understand, that is the how to make the organization development is there. This is the research paper, managing the social and human capital in the organization, communicates of the practices as a strategic tool for the individual and organization development is there. This will also help you to understand how we can make the research and come out with this particular development process of the organization. This is a book that is organization development by this Dr. Mi Wen Chung and the Linda Holbesch. This book will be helping you to understand what are the different techniques are there for the organization development. These are the references, dear friends, which you can refer to go into the detail for this particular process. Thank you.